Welcome back. I am so excited that you have joined me again in the Aligned Womb, Aligned You podcast. I'm Kate Nagai, and I am your host and womb guide on this journey. I'm here to help you to lean into the language of your menstrual cycle so that you can align yourself and awaken and activate to your womb wisdom to live the most inspired life. I am so excited to jump into this episode and to dive into today's topic. So let's get started. Welcome back to the Aligned Womb, Aligned You podcast. I am so excited to have a returning guest, Madeline MacKinnon. If you remember, Madeline was one of our guests in one of our very first episodes way back in the beginning of this podcast. And I'm so thrilled to have her come back again and talk about a topic that I think every woman needs to know more about. So in case if you haven't listened to the previous episode, Madeline MacKinnon is a passionate nutritionist with 10 years of experience helping women to recover from debilitating hormone imbalances. To pursue her mission, Madeline founded Natural Hormone Healing because she believes women need a holistic day-to-day strategy to balance their hormone health and fertility without synthetic hormones or medications. She is known for her popular hormone balancing cooking classes that she teaches live across Canada. But she also supports women worldwide through her premium one-on-one online hormone healing coaching program and is the author of a very new cookbook, the Hormone Type Cookbook, and is my go-to person for all nutrition and hormones. So welcome, Madeline. I am so excited to have you here. Today, we're going to be exploring all about the Dutch test, which is so exciting because I'm a newbie to the Dutch test. I just had it done. I've known about it for years, but it was an investment. And finally I was like, no, you know what? I'm having all these hormone imbalances. I want to see what's happening with my hormones. So I invested, I did it, and I do not regret it 1% at all. Like, I think every woman should have their hormones tested now.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm also looking forward to this conversation because I know so many people are struggling to know what's going on with their hormones, and often going to the doctors can be pretty disappointing. I'm sure a lot of people listening have maybe had this experience where they've gone to their doctor and they said, I want to get my hormones checked. And they told them, well, we're not going to test your hormones because your hormones fluctuate every single month, or, we don't think it's necessary, or why don't you just go on the pill instead and try and fix it that way. So I know it can be really frustrating to get these answers. So I want to talk to everyone today of how you can navigate that and talk a little bit more about some alternative testing you can get done that's actually more effective than a lot of conventional blood testings for hormones, especially fertility and perimenopause.
That's so great. And it's interesting that you say like frustrated with your doctor, because we're going to dive into this in a bit, but we're going to go all into my test results that I got from the Dutch test. But one of the things that showed up on mine was low testosterone. And you had said the testosterone is best through blood work, so go see your doctor. And I am so glad that I had the conversation with you prior to knowing what I had to ask for. But I also met with my naturopath doctor who said, you might have to fight a little bit for this one. And here's how you communicate it. So between the two of you, you guys prepared me to go into there. And yeah, I went in and I asked for my testosterone to be tested. And I was told it wasn't necessary because that was a male hormone. And I'm so glad I had the language and I knew why I was doing what I was doing, because I was able to really push and advocate to the point where I was finally like, okay, fine, I'll let you get your testosterone tested, but it's not going to tell you anything and it doesn't really impact your health. So I don't know why you want this. It's a waste of time.
And I'm curious, so how did you advocate for yourself? Like, how did you ask them?
Well, I, first of all, because I was also seeing my naturopath, I hadn't had blood work done since I was pregnant, like probably with my first, like it's been a good 10 years. And she's like, since you're going in, let's do the full panel. So she gave me a list of everything that she wanted me to ask for. And she's like, they're not going to give it to you all, but at least tried to ask for all these things. And so I knew that I really wanted to own in on the thyroid and I really wanted to push the testosterone. So when he told me that testosterone wasn't a female hormone and it wasn't going to impact my health, I said, that's great, but I'm already getting the work done. Like I'm already getting blood work done. It's just as easy for me to get it tested. And I'm just curious for my own peace of mind because I'm working with a nutritionist and I would really like to know what my testosterone levels are. I honestly did not tell him that I did the Dutch test, and I did not tell him that I was working with a naturopath as well, because I have found advocating for my health that as soon as I say naturopathic doctor, or if I mention some external test, then it sends up a flare and
Mm-hmm.
they're more resistant. So I just
Yes.
went with the whole thing of like, we're already doing this. It's really no big deal to test one more thing. It's not like I'm just asking for this. And so in the end, I think I also had my 3-year-old with me. So I'm sure that helped in wanting to get us expedited out of that office as quickly as possible. But yeah, it was a bit of a struggle. And I will not lie, I felt uncomfortable. I felt
Mm-hmm.
like there, if any woman's listening to this and thinking like, but I feel anxious, or I feel like I just feel gross inside. Yeah, I felt that too. And yet I had the resources and I knew how important it was.
Yeah.
So just power through those icky gut feelings, those butterflies, and just know that you can advocate for your health. And if you can't, just go back and see a different doctor, because someone will
Yeah.
eventually give it to you.
Definitely. Yeah, it can be a different experience with every single doctor. I work with clients all over the world, and there's different people, in Alberta where we're from. Some people, the doctors are just so open to the testing, and then others not. And then I noticed in other countries, some countries are totally different than other ones in how open they are to testing.
Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah, but I'm glad you shared that, just because it's good to have just an idea of what people should be asking for, and just
mhm.
your approach of, I'm going to ask because, it's just one more test. That's a
Yeah,
strategy that we can use.
yeah, for sure. So
Yeah.
so Madeline, can you tell us a little bit about what is the Dutch test exactly?
Yeah. So the Dutch test is a dried urine test. So essentially it's different than testing your serum. What it essentially you're doing is you're peeing on a piece of paper. Typically for the main test, you're doing it 4 times a day so you can test your adrenal hormones. And then you're drying it out, sending it back to the company. And a couple of the differences to blood testing is it's showing metabolites that are coming up in your urine. So they're actually showing different metabolites of different hormones. And that can actually give you a really, really good look at different aspects of hormones that you can't necessarily get through your blood. And so one example would be estrogen. So what I get really passionate about, because I work with a lot of estrogen dominant cases, is it's telling you your overall estrogen levels that your ovaries are producing from those metabolites, but it's actually showing you how well through the metabolites, how well your estrogen is breaking down and getting eliminated through your body. Because a lot of estrogen issues happen not just because your estrogen is high, it can actually happen because your body's not eliminating your estrogen and then it's getting reabsorbed. So we're able to see actually which issue a person may have. And then from there, we can actually work with the right supplements, the right herbs, the right nutrition to correct that. So the metabolites are really key. Another benefit too is it's actually showing organic acids as well as not just hormones. So we can test your B6 metabolite, your B12 metabolite, and getting those levels are tested are important too with hormones. Because for example, if you were low in your B6 metabolite, you might actually, that could cause low progesterone. So those are just some examples of why it's effective. The other thing is it's just so thorough. So it's just showing, it's showing so many different types of hormones. I don't have the full number, but you're going to get a more thorough look of all of your hormones, because often with blood testing, we're just testing a couple different hormones. We're not getting this full picture. So it's just very comprehensive of how everything shows up. So we can get more of an idea of a clinical picture for the patient of what's going on.
And I must say, the test results, when I got my package back from them, I was quite surprised with the graphs and the dials. And although a lot of it, I was like, I don't know how to read this, what I could understand by just looking at it, it really helped me see where I was in the normal range, because the normal range is it can be quite big, right?
Yes.
And so to know that I was still in the normal range, but right on the cusp, was kind of
Mm-hmm.
really helpful for me. I loved the visual aid of this test. I thought it
Yeah.
was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really great. And what I do a lot is we were talking about testosterone, and there's some hormones that are better to test with blood. So for example, what I like to do when I'm working with a client is we do the Dutch test, and then you also will go and get blood testing done. Often you will go to your doctor, or you might go to another practitioner, but you'll get a few other tests, like you'll get a full thyroid panel done. I'm a huge advocate for that. Let's get the full thyroid panel done. And then there's just a few, like testosterone. Some people have this, it's just based on genetics, where testosterone doesn't show up in the urine tests as accurately. So often I'll get you to also test your testosterone through blood. So then we get this really thorough look, because it's important, because some people always tell me they've gone to get their hormones tested. And this is another thing that a lot of people come about, and they tell me, I've been to my doctor, but everything came back normal. And I always ask them, first off, what did you test? And then what were the actual readings? Because some of the issues with testing is that it's just not thorough enough. So what, if you just get your progesterone tested or your estrogen tested, and the doctor tells you everything's normal, that's not actually going to give you an accurate picture at all of your hormones. And often it is, I'm not surprised that it's normal, because usually there are more deeper things that are going on. So the biggest issue is it's just not thorough enough results to actually figure out what the issue is. So that's really important.
Well, and I think sometimes when it comes to working with our medical doctor, is that when we get these test results back, the range of what Western or conventional medicine considers normal and abnormal is quite different than a lens of someone who's looking at it from a holistic approach or trying to get to a root cause. Because the Dutch test showed that my testosterone was low. I went and got the blood work done. The doctor said it was in the normal range, but the naturopath said it's a little bit below normal. So it is something that we can start to play with and tweak. It's not critically low, but it is low. So let's bring it back up.
And you know what also I've been seeing, looking at testosterone results, I just looked at one the other day, yesterday, in Alberta, on the lab test results. It's what I've been observing is that it actually only flags your results or if it's high, if your testosterone is high. But I was looking at one client and it didn't flag it anything lower, and hers was actually significantly low on the test results too. So sometimes they don't even pick things up. They don't think that's an issue. And then thyroid is another issue too. Then that's why I like to get a more detailed blood test, is that there's a difference between an optimal thyroid level versus a normal level. So often they'll only flag your TSH if it's over a 4, but even if your TSH is over a 3 or a 2.5, you could still be having thyroid symptoms and not have it be flagged or show up, because it's just not in that normal range. So I know it can be super frustrating to navigate. And that's why it is good to work with a practitioner that understands hormones and understands the difference between normal, optimal ranges, because it can be tough to navigate just on our own.
And I think what I found too is that once this information came through, it was so great to have both my naturopath and you on my team to give me resources from different approaches. Like you really focused on the nutrition and the supplements. She also focused on supplements, but then she also focused on lifestyle stuff, right? Like, how can we get more activity in your life? How can we bring more pleasure and joy into your life? Because I was also dealing with a lot of anxiety and just overwhelmment. And so like we made like a true health plan that I don't necessarily think I would have got with a physician of like, so what brings you pleasure? What kind of activities do you really like sparks joy in you? Those aren't really the conversations that you have, which was really great to have both, like having really great resources and tools and things that made a huge impact for my hormones in a short period of time to come back into what I feel is balance. I don't have a test result to prove that, but I know how I feel in my body. And it is completely different than how I felt a few months ago. So
definitely. It's so important to be feeling better. And, that's what I gauge a lot working with a lot of clients, is we look at their hormone test results, and then often they wonder, should I retest? And there's some cases where I really recommend retesting. But the thing is, if you're feeling better, if your symptoms are reducing, you're feeling a lot better, that's what we're going for. We're going for you actually feeling really good over time.
Yeah. And I think the more that we learn how to interact with our hormones, interact with our cycle, we notice the subtle shifts in our body. Like our body is talking to us and we can really tune in to feeling, yeah, I feel different. I'm sleeping better. I'm not as reactive. I feel more joy, or I have more motivation. Like these are all things that are very tangible things for us to reflect on and experience.
Super important.
Yeah. And when I did this test, like I said in the beginning, I felt, I guess 5 years ago when I first learned about the Dutch test, I really felt like it was such a huge investment. And I was like, I don't know if I want to, like, what am I going to get out of it? Like, I was no longer trying to get pregnant at the time, although I could see the benefit for fertility. But for me, just being in my late 30s, I was like, I don't think I need this. Now that I've had it done, because I was really curious. Like, I think it took me 5 years to get on board with it. But once I had it done, I was so blown away from it that I was like, I think I don't know, we'll see how my body feels, but every 3 to 5 years, I wouldn't mind having this redone so that I have something to compare of like,
yes,
because I'm 42 now, right? And so at 42, this was what my hormones were like. What are they going to be at 45? Because now I'm getting deeper into perimenopause. And what can I do to shift and support to help my body? And I think what like sold me on it so much was just how different I felt and how simple some of the things were that you gave me to do to feel better. And I now know that when I'm 45, when I'm 50, when I'm like in that transition to menopause, that I can have tools to actually not feel like this is an event that's happening to me, but actually still living my life. So
yeah, I totally agree. I think doing tests over time can be so valuable because you can see if you have any patterns and see, okay, what's happening to my progesterone over time, what's happening to my estrogen. It's so valuable to look at. So I did share the screen here. I know that we will be listening to a podcast, so you won't have the full visual, but I did want to talk a little bit about fertility and why I think the test is really important for fertility, especially for those. So you could do this test for multiple stages in your fertility journey. I think that it could be really beneficial for anyone that wants to start trying to conceive within the next year or the next 6 months, just to gauge where they're at so they can figure out what they want to work on. I think that's really beneficial for those people that want to be really proactive. And then it can also, I work with a lot of clients too that, have been trying to conceive. Maybe they're considering fertility treatments. Maybe they're going through fertility treatments, even looking, for example, I've had multiple clients that have come to me after having miscarriages. And especially people that are having multiple miscarriages and they don't know why, one of the most beneficial areas to actually look at your hormones is to see your progesterone and see how well your progesterone is holding up. It can be so valuable to see just to make sure, because not a lot of people, it's not common practice to test progesterone. Even if someone has had multiple miscarriages, of course, it depends on the doctor, but you need progesterone. Your body actually relies on your progesterone to maintain pregnancy in that second half of your cycle. So I think always looking at that progesterone for fertility is really important. Yeah. And other areas too is your testosterone is also really important to make sure that you have good levels of testosterone and DHEA. Our DHEA levels are actually really key for your egg quality, and having really high quality eggs is really important for having, maintaining healthy pregnancy. So egg quality, we know that's important. If I saw that, here on this dial, your DHEA is actually looking great, Kate. But if I saw someone had a low DHEA and they were trying to conceive, on that test, that would show us that we need to work on increasing that and need to boost egg quality.
It's that time again. It's Black Friday. I am so excited for the 5 days of 5 different deals that I am going to be offering this Black Friday. If you want a sneak peek at what's going to be offered and be one of the first people to access these deals, you're going to want to get on my Black Friday VIP list. The link to get on the list is in the show notes below. By signing up, not only will you receive an email a week before Black Friday listing all the deals, but you will also have access to purchase each and every one of them in that email. So this is something that you're not going to want to miss out on. So go to the show notes, click on the link, and get on the VIP list today. And the other thing that I loved about this chart was the cortisol pattern. Like I found that super helpful because I was feeling mid-morning, like I was feeling alert first thing, and then I was crashing. And then I was also going through this little bit of a spike where I was really energized at bedtime. And so understanding my cortisol pattern really helped me understand what was happening.
Yeah. The cortisol pattern is really important because it actually, you do the test 4 times during the course of like an evening and then in the morning. So you'll do it and you'll get this whole map of what your cortisol looks throughout the day. And it can tell us, have we been having a lot of stress? And so can you tell me more, Kate, do you remember how you were feeling at the time when you did decide to do this Dutch testing back in March, I believe?
Yeah. So some of the big things that were alarming me was that mid-morning crash where I just I literally, you know how a lot of people talk about the 3 p.m. crash? Mine was happening so early in the day that I just wasn't having motivation to do things anymore. Like I was so exhausted. Another big thing that was a big flag for me that I knew I really wanted to rectify was that ovulation felt like a second menstruation for me, not in pain, but in the level of energy that I had. Like I literally during ovulation, when you think that you would have all this energy and playfulness, and I was just so tired. Like I could have slept all day during my ovulation week. Like it was just, I had no motivation whatsoever. I was starting to have some hair loss, like a lot of hair loss, which was concerning me a bit. The brittle nails, no sex drive whatsoever. Like I had zero libido. Like that was not even something that was on my mind or desired. Like it was completely gone whatsoever. There was some other things that I was feeling really irritable at times. Like I was finding that I was having a lot of irritability. I think the biggest thing for me was the ovulation, was the amount of exhaustion and no motivation, right? Like that was the other sign for the low testosterone, is that I just had no drive for life. Like no passion, no wanting to even like think about doing something. Like thinking about going to the gym just felt like, no, I can't, I don't have it in me. Like anything that would bring me any kind of level of fun in life, I just didn't have the resources.
And what you're describing is the low testosterone symptoms. So for those of you, like we saw in your test results, that you had low testosterone come up, and that is the low testosterone often can cause low libido. It can cause us to feel less motivation. Testosterone impacts our motivation huge. It can even influence hair loss. There's a lot of different hormone imbalances that can influence it, but it can be an influence as well. And it can be an influence if it's high or if it's really low. But what you're describing is that perfect scenario of having lower testosterone. Yeah. And then so I'm looking at your test results here, and I want to describe to you how this is really one of the biggest benefits of this test is we can figure out why you're feeling this way. So let's look at, you told me that you were feeling exhausted at ovulation. And one thing I'm seeing here is that your estrogen levels were in the red. And what that means is your estrogen levels, both of them were above range. And you were doing this test at a time in your cycle where your progesterone should have been higher than your estrogen. But your estrogen was really high. And actually, so what can happen at ovulation, if estrogen does go too high, it can give you a lot of symptoms, making you might feel more fatigued. You may feel more that depressed, more moody. Some people will notice even like ovulation pain or breast tenderness, more anxiety.
I had extreme breast tenderness where I couldn't even take off my bra, and it wasn't for a day. It was like for a week. Like it was just intense breast pain.
Yeah. So you were dealing with, so that's a great thing we saw on your test, that we're seeing these high levels of estrogen, your estrone, and your estradiol, those were both high. And those are the estrogens that we create from our ovaries. And then the other issue that we're seeing for you, and this could even be contributing to some of the feelings of anxiety, feelings of more stress, is that your phase 2, there was an issue with your phase 2 estrogen detox. We were seeing here that it was low, so that your body was having problems like properly detoxing your estrogen down the phase 2 pathways. So we were seeing from your test, your phase 1 looked good, but the phase 2 was problematic. And so basically what we're seeing is that your methylation activity was low, and low methylation activity can also really influence like feeling a lot of mental health symptoms can be exacerbated when we have low methylation, and a lot of those estrogen dominant symptoms like breast pain, a lot of those ones that you were describing can be a huge issue. So that's why we looked at that. And the good news is that what I love about the Dutch test and working with this as holistic practitioners, we can actually do things with these results. It's not like a lot of people sometimes feel fear about getting their hormones checked because they don't want to see what's wrong with them. But the thing is, what we're doing is we're seeing what your levels are, and then you're getting a plan. So for you, I know what we did do some things for detoxing the estrogen. So I was going to share a little bit, of course, with your permission to
Totally
share all of this. But we were focusing first off on some estrogen detoxing foods. So one thing that we focused on was the broccoli sprouts. So
game changer. Anyone who has estrogen dominance, get broccoli sprouts into your diet. It was it was fantastic.
And how were you getting your broccoli sprouts? Were you buying them or making them?
I was buying them. Low energy. I did not have the motivation to try to figure out how to do it on my own. Although now I've learned it's very easy. But yeah, I was buying them from the organic food store here. And the beautiful thing was that my kids got curious about what I was eating, and I was putting them on every meal because I was determined to shift this estrogen dominance that was in my body. And I feel like it was the easiest nutritional thing I could have done, rather than being like, don't eat this, don't withdraw all of this from your diet, only eat these 5 different meals. Instead, this was something that was just so easy to put on my meals. I even put it on my spaghetti. It was on everything. And I really do think that it made a huge, huge difference.
Yeah. Can make it's a game changer, because broccoli sprouts are high in sulforaphane, which is this amazing substance that it's high in broccoli, but it's like really high in broccoli sprouts, and it helps boost glutathione, and it really helps push the estrogen down those pathways to help with proper detox. So I love that. And then we also saw that some of your B vitamins were coming up low as well in your Dutch test. So for example, your B12, I believe, your B12, that was at the high end of the range in its the metabolite of your B12. So what that actually means is if your metabolite's high, then that means that you could be deficient in B12. And it's actually showing like what your body's used. So there's actually a lot of speculation that this test can be even more accurate than blood levels of B12, because it's not showing what your body has used and metabolized. So that was coming up on the high. So B12 is really important too for phase 2 estrogen detox. So just by supplementing with that, it's really helpful. And I'm sure you were doing some magnesium is really good for phase 2 detox. And then there are certain foods like egg yolks, like the choline and egg yolk, beets, adding lots of beets to the diet, any sort of cruciferous vegetables. So there is a whole protocol that works really effectively for that.
And that was one thing that was in your cookbook that I really liked and I never tried it before, was having raw beets as part of my smoothies. And it was, well, I like the taste of beets, but for my kids, they don't like the taste of beets. But it totally masked it. And it was an easy way to get beets was in a smoothie.
Yes.
And I would have never thought of putting beets in a smoothie until.
Yeah, the tip is to mix it with some sort of berries, because for some reason, beets and berries go amazing together.
And, talking about B12 as well, that was the one supplement. And once again, I think this is the beauty of when you really start to come into relationship with your body, you really know what your medicine is. And taking a supplement for B12, like that was one that my body craved every day. Like, wow. I could forget to take my vitamins, but B12, it was like, there was no forgetting. Like, it instinctual that I just knew I needed it. I always felt really good after taking it. And I know that it's not because it actually got into my system that quickly, but there was just something. And it wasn't because I actually knew what B12 was doing for me. I'm not a specialist in supplements at all, but there was just something so unique about that one that my body just craved for it every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad you noticed that, because often you can feel it does give you energy. If it's the right medicine for you, it should give you energy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the cortisol levels too. I'm sharing my screen again because you were telling me that you would feel a crash in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're seeing here, so this is your cortisol pattern. I'll go down actually to this page here. But we're seeing your cortisol pattern, and we're seeing here, right, that it was a bit low when you were waking up. So it was a little bit sluggish. So you might not have felt energized right away, but then it did go normal in the morning. So it did go do that normal spike. So that's great. But then it was crashing to below the range in the afternoon. And it's not just on the low end of the range. Yours was going below the range in the afternoon. So that was likely the reason why you were feeling those crashes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those
And
crashes
then,
at 12 o'clock were just, they were killing me for work,
yeah.
for parenting, for everything. It really was impacting my life.
Mm-hmm. And I think what probably helps you a lot with that too was the protein. So one recommendation I gave you is having between 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal. That's actually one of the most simple but effective ways to like have more energy, reduce cravings, and it can also help a lot with our adrenal health by stabilizing our blood sugar, because often our blood sugar can also be linked to those energy crashes and those cortisol crashes too. So by prioritizing that protein in your meals, that is a simple way to make a really big difference too.
Mm-hmm. And for me, protein wasn't necessarily hard at lunch or supper, but it was non-existent at breakfast. And that was a really, that's still a conscious effort for me every day of going, okay, what am I going to put in my breakfast for protein today? And it's also shifted because now I'm also thinking about my kids of like, what kind of protein can I give them first thing in the day as well?
And I can tell you that the protein at breakfast is actually the most important time out of all your meals to have protein. And it's the time we have the least. But I know for me, I've been really prioritizing that protein this last couple weeks after getting back from traveling and my wedding in Brazil. And I just have been feeling so good from having it, and what I do is I've just been having one egg and then 3/4 of a cup of egg whites. And I know not everyone likes egg whites, but what I've been trying to do is just scrambling it in butter, adding pepper, adding some spices, and then having it, with some type of smoked salmon or some toast. And the egg whites are, they're not something everyone loves, but I definitely recommend giving it a try and just see how you feel.
And that was one of the things that you and I had talked about is what are some protein breakfast solutions for me? And eggs is always, I think, an obvious one for a lot of people as a go-to breakfast. But one thing that you did recommend is a good protein shake first thing in the morning. And I loved how you put it. You're like, for the busy moms who have to pack lunches and get their kids to school, get up and have a protein shake just to get you going so that you can get those things done. And then if you need to, you can make yourself a bigger, healthier breakfast after that. But to have that kick of protein in the morning.
Just to know that you've already nailed your protein, and then you don't have to worry about it as much in that next meal. I think it's such a big deal. So the protein shake, like I like the eggs, but the protein shake is perfect as well for those people that just need something fast and quick.
Now, I know you said smoked salmon as well. Is there another protein that you would recommend for breakfast time? For people that struggle?
I'm looking at animal proteins. So like if you can find any really nice like breakfast sausages, especially that are high in protein. So we had some bison breakfast sausages today that I know bison is usually, whenever you see meat that's more lean, usually it will have more protein. So I'm not against fat. I think fat is really beneficial. But when I'm searching for protein, I'm always looking for like more things that are leaner actually. So like a bison sausage, maybe a chicken sausage just on the side. But another one that's actually really great is looking for organic yogurt. And often the non-fat yogurts have more protein in them. So I always look for organic skyr. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. It's like this Icelandic yogurt that has about 20 grams per serving. per bowl of yogurt. So that's great. Or having some kefir, possibly like a little glass of kefir on the side. 1 cup of kefir will give you 10 grams. So that's a great way to boost it up in your smoothie, for example. Or even possibly, even making up some, like doing some meal prep and making some high protein, like egg white protein cups that you can add veggies to. So maybe you add some pesto, sweet potato, and some egg whites, and then actually put all of those little egg white cups into the freezer and then just grab it as you need. Or maybe even making some little meatloafs that you can do in like muffin tins. So there's, even those grab and go protein options are great.
And that was one thing that you had told me that I do for lunch is making a bunch of meatballs and then putting them in the freezer. And that's my go-to lunch sometimes when I'm really busy and need a protein.
Yeah. Yeah. Just always think about ways to make things fast and easy for yourself. Yeah. I love our conversation. I love that we're just talking about protein and ideas and the Dutch test, because it all relates. It all really relates.
Well, and something that you did say, what we haven't really touched on this, but I'm going to bring it up because I know how important it is. You talked about it last podcast that we did together. And we also talked about it one-on-one when we were doing my Dutch test, was fish and the importance of fish. And so I'm somebody who struggles to get fish in my diet, unless if it's sushi, but I have actually started to find creative ways. Like where I live, there's an organic food store here that they have cubed up little tiny pieces of tuna. And I know tuna is not like one that you want to over consume, but it's really easy because they're just tiny cubes that I can quickly sear them and eat them versus them being in a can. They also had a bunch of salmon hamburger patties already pre-made that had like feta cheese in them and spinach. So like they had really good stuff. They're a little bit more on the costly side, but it is a way for me to get my fish in twice a week. And I throw the salmon burgers that they make there into the air fryer for 4 minutes. And it's so easy. I had it yesterday for lunch, and it's just a way for me to remember to get that fish in.
Yes.
That's not necessarily eating fish and rice, right? So
100%. Yeah, I love those easy ideas. The air fryer is great for fish. Also, just a salmon fillet, throwing it even from frozen on some parchment paper in the air fryer, I find is quite delicious. It's one of the most tasty ways I've had salmon. Add a little bit of butter on top. It's great.
Yeah. So get your fish in, people.
Yes. Get your fish in. So what kind of the basics of what we were doing for your protocol is, those were the major things we were seeing. That cortisol, where there was an issue with your cortisol here. It wasn't like an intense issue. It wasn't like it was all low, because I do see that sometimes on the Dutch test, people having really low cortisol, and that can even influence fertility sometimes. If someone's been having trouble getting pregnant, looking at that low cortisol can be a huge indicator to see if there's anything else deeper going on. If your cortisol is really high, it can also influence your body. It can create, people can have troubles losing weight. It can create like high levels of stress, sleep issue. But for you, that main thing was that it was just hitting below range in the afternoon. So your issue was that slump, which it sounds like you've been feeling a lot better. And I think it has been like the diet and some of those supplements that you were doing.
Yeah, no, I think the big things that we worked on was the estrogen, making sure that it was detoxing, and the testosterone, and then trying to create some balance with that cortisol. And the 3 things that I really took away from our conversation that we had when we were looking at my test that were easy, practical things that made the hugest difference, I personally think, was 1, having protein in the morning for breakfast, making sure that I was getting that in. 2 was to make sure that I was getting those broccoli sprouts in. That I was another easy, really didn't take any power of mind at all to get it in. And then the 3rd was stopping coffee first thing in the morning on an empty stomach.
Yes. So that's another thing with the cortisol, and that's coffee. Coffee, unfortunately, can spike our cortisol too high and can also increase adrenaline. So having coffee after you eat your high protein breakfast can prevent your cortisol from spiking too much. And your cortisol was actually almost getting to that high end of the range in the morning there. And I think stopping coffee could have also helped reduce those crashes, because if we go up too high, we can, what goes up must come down eventually too. So the coffee is something where I'm not fully against coffee for hormones. I don't think coffee is poison, but for certain people, coffee can really be problematic. And there's some people that it just spikes their cortisol. They just need to have it at different times. There's also people that coffee can cause more tender breasts in the second half of the cycle. So in the luteal phase, more tender breasts can be a major issue, and just stopping coffee can help. I mean, for me, I find coffee can be a trigger for hormonal headaches. I don't know the full reasons, but I think it might even cause a bit of mild dehydration for me. So I've had to really cut back on coffee as well.
And for me, it was that was the first thing I would do is I'd wake up, I'd make my coffee, and then I would start making lunches and feeding the kids and then getting them to school. And then I would come home and worry about my breakfast and getting ready. And so that's where I was like, that habit had to change. And it's really amazing because since just being more aware of it, I still drink coffee, but I don't crave it in the mornings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say going from having coffee every single day, one cup, I only
Yes.
had one cup every single day. I probably have one cup every 2 weeks now.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
more of like just this thing of like, you know what? I actually feel like I want a cup of coffee. It's not I need this because I've now
Yes.
woke up. And I think that's like the big thing is that I just feel so much more energy in my system that when I wake, I'm not dependent on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's always worth giving yourself some time to do other things that are going to increase your energy, and notice. I find for me, I've been focusing on working out, going to the gym, going for walks. I've been taking my athletic greens powder with all my vitamins and minerals. And I've been finding just by doing that, I'm doing all these things that are kind of crowding the coffee out. And then I'm already feeling a lot more energized. So, and then when if I do start having coffee, often it can just spiral, and it's like you want more and you want more. The more addicted you are, often it's like the less you should be having it.
Mm-hmm. And I think for me, waking up first thing in the morning, it was the thing that I needed so I could get my day going. And
Yes.
now I don't feel like I need that catalyst to get going, which is nice. So,
Definitely.
so this has been great going through the test results, kind of going through what some of my symptoms were and how we could relate that to what the test was showing us. But I also want people to know what it is that you do with this, because you have what I think is an amazing package. To get the Dutch test done, you have to, as far as I know, have to go through somebody who can administer it, as in like get you the package, get it shipped to your house, and who can read the results with you. But you add on a whole nutritional, like you have a little package deal with this, which is what I signed up for. Do you want to go a bit into what your offer is with
Yes, I would
the
love
Dutch?
to. Yeah, I have just a mini Dutch hormone package for anyone that wants to get their hormones read. But that the problem what happens is that if anyone just gets their Dutch test results, it's hard to just read them yourself. It's not something
Yes.
that is just you understand right away, because a lot of it is about the ratios and really understanding what that means. But essentially what I have is I have a package where you get the Dutch test as part of the package. It can get shipped directly to you. You can get it shipped almost anywhere in the world that UPS will ship. You can get it done. So I've done this with clients in Europe, Canada, US, multiple different locations around the world. So it is quite accessible. And so you do your test, and then what we'll do is that you'll actually get 2 sessions with me after you do the test to go through those results. And what we're going to do is I'll share the screen with you, and we'll go step by step and talk about your results and talk about what it means for your symptoms. So you also get a very detailed assessment form too. So we really help you understand what's going on. Often what a lot of people say to me when they get the results done is they're like, this is so affirming to me because now I feel like I'm not crazy. I actually feel like there's a reason for what's going on. So it can be actually empowering. So I'll send you type up your report and tell you what that means. But then we'll talk about what you can do with your report. So I'll focus on 3 different things. Lifestyle, super important. What sort of lifestyle shifts need to happen? Is there any, even for example, exercise? Is there any specific types of exercise that could be harmful for you, or are there types that are better? So for example, if someone comes to me with really high cortisol and they're running every day, training for a marathon, that might not be appropriate for their hormones, and they may need to shift their exercise. So that's one area. Then we work with herbs and supplements. So I like to, for example, I may even give you like an herbal tea recommendation for your hormone results, and then certain supplements. And then, when it comes to the supplements, I'll tell you how long you should be taking them. That's why we have the follow-up, so we can see how it's going. So often you may only really need to take these supplements for 3 to 6 months, and then you can stop afterwards. And then there's some that you would take as maintenance. And then, of course, my favorite part is nutrition. So I have this cookbook here called the Hormone Type Cookbook that goes in depth into certain foods to eat for certain hormone levels. So then you'll also get recipes, nutrition recommendations, specific foods, and you also get a couple meal plans as well. So you're just getting this full package to support you. And then we'll do one follow-up too. So if anyone is interested in that, I'd really recommend just reaching out to me. Probably the best way would be to either, I can put my email below, or you can contact me on Instagram. It's at Natural Hormone Healing on Instagram, and then I'll get you hooked up with the test, and because it's so beneficial to be able to know like what's going on. If you're having issues, some people have come to me having just issues with major breakouts, and they want to know, what's the reason behind this? What's the reason behind my low libido? Can it help get that clarity? And it's really, really important. Or if you're just interested in health optimization, some people come to me, they're like, I just want to optimize my health. And it's helpful from there.
Yes. And even if you're not doing the Dutch test, go buy that cookbook. It is so good. What I love about your cookbook is that it's not just a cookbook. I think when we hear cookbook, we're just like, okay, it's another cookbook that's going to be in my closet or my cupboard that's just going to have recipes in it. But yours is like a real big hormone guide. Like there is quite an in-depth write-up in each chapter with each hormone type, per se, that goes through what that hormone importance is, what the imbalance is telling us, what we can, like, I was blown away with the amount of content in that cookbook. It is such a great resource. And it's one that I recommend to every client that I work with. You have to go get this book. And you can get it anywhere. You can get it at Chapters, you can get it on Amazon, you can get it anywhere. So the link to the book I will put in the show notes below, along with how to contact Madeline if you want to do this Dutch test as well, and as well as with her Instagram account, because this has been a game changer in me honestly feeling like a whole different human being that I haven't felt like in a few years. And if I'm being honest, it's probably been like my youngest, my third child is just 4 now. And I don't think I've felt this good since pre-pregnancy. And I was putting a lot of it down to, the first year with baby, postpartum, and then pandemic, and still breastfeeding. Like I breastfed my youngest until he was 3 because of the pandemic. And so I was expending so much of my energy on mothering that I just kept putting it going, well, it's just because I have young kids. It's because I'm still breastfeeding. It's because I'm postpartum. Like I had all these excuses. And then finally, when all those excuses were gone, the pandemic was done. I was no longer breastfeeding. My kids are older. And I was like, I still feel like crap. Why? Like this wasn't okay anymore. And then I was really starting to worry, is this perimenopause? And not that I was scared of perimenopause, but I was like, I know that perimenopause can be 10 years and I don't want to live like this for 10 years, especially the breast tenderness. Like the exhaustion was one thing, but the breast tenderness was like, it was through the roof that I was like, something's got to change. This is a big sign. Like this is my body saying, you weren't listening to my subtle signs. So I'm going to give you a really big sign now. So
I'm so glad you're feeling better. It's that's what happens when women start nourishing themselves. Like when we start really eating well, it's amazing the shifts that can happen.
Yeah. And like I said, small things like, yes, I tried the recipes. Yes, I played with having beets in my smoothie. Yes, I did a lot of these things. But when I really sat with it, the 3 big lifestyle changes that I wouldn't even say them lifestyle, the 3 changes that I made that were the easiest and that I stayed with consistently was the protein at breakfast, the Brussels sprouts or the broccoli sprouts, sorry, and the no coffee first thing in the morning without having food in my stomach first.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't have
And
to
I'm
be
glad.
hard.
Thanks for being open and sharing this with everyone, because I think it's really helpful to see someone's experience and actually, know what it's like, what the process is like.
Yeah. And I think to get out of our heads when we see a price tag on something and go, oh, well, you know what? I can just put that off till another day, or I really don't need
Yes.
that. I'll just eat differently. And yes, I could have just followed your cookbook and ate differently and hoped. But what I loved about this is that it was my guide of like, no, this is exactly what is happening in your body. Like
Yeah.
it just made everything so much clearer and really helped you and I work together and helped me work with my naturopath better of like how to isolate really what we want to work on for creating that shift. Like
Yes.
without a doubt, it was the best investment I ever made and one that I will repeat
Amazing.
throughout
Yeah,
my
that's
bleeding
so
years.
important. And I also ask people to think, because I've been in this boat before, like I used to spend so much money on supplements that I didn't even know if they were going to be good for me or not. And I think sometimes it's so easy to just spend, $40, $50 on a supplement. But then when you add all those supplements up, it's actually sometimes you can actually save money in the long run by actually getting a hormone test and only taking what you need instead of just guessing about things. I know I had that experience for me. I thought that I had I thought I still might have had an estrogen issue when I did my personal Dutch test. And when I saw everything was fine, I got the relief of being like, okay, no, I don't have to worry about taking DIM or taking these other supplements. I actually need to focus on my glutathione and boosting my glutathione instead. It can be really, it can help a lot too. But thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah, it's such a great experience. So everyone, go get this test done.
Yes.
It is like a women's necessity. Like, I don't know. There's so many things that we spend money on that we don't blink an eye at, that I think because something's new that sometimes we analyze it too much. But honestly, this is worth every dime. And I would do it again.
Yeah.
Any day of the week. So
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Madeline. It's been such a great conversation. I'm so glad that people got to experience this, and hopefully it helps them feel more confident in committing to trying to do the Dutch test and seeing what the results are. And I highly recommend everyone just getting the Dutch test and then working with Madeline to get the nutritional elements and the supplement element. Because it was like having somebody that could personally read this and go through it and make me feel better about what can happen. And I will contest that it changed my life. Like it made me feel completely 100% different. So thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise with us today. Are you excited about aligning to your cycle? If so, make sure that you subscribe to this podcast and like the episode if it really resonated with you. Until next time, remember, womb wisdom equals connection to self, which ultimately equals inspired living.